Hey, General Hospital fans, it's Radhika, and we're going to talk about General Hospital spoilers for the week of July 20th through July 24th. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us. So, this week on General Hospital, the mood is messy right out of the gate because Monday starts with Carly being shaken, and that is never just a casual little wobble, you know? When Carly is rattled, it usually means somebody touched a nerve, uncovered a loose end, or pushed her into that mode where she looks calm on the outside, but is absolutely unglued underneath. And right alongside that, Lulu meets with Sunny, which instantly makes me perk up, because those conversations are rarely filler. They usually come with emotional baggage, hard truths, or some kind of strategic angle. And then you've got Valentine standing his ground, which is such a Valentine phrase, honestly, because of course he does. He never backs down gracefully. He does it with that icy confidence that makes everything feel more diabolical than it probably needs to be. And then Monday keeps piling it on, because Willow makes an unpleasant realization, and I already know that has to sting. Willow has had this pattern lately where reality arrives like a truck, and when it does, it is never gentle. It's always the kind of realization that makes you replay every conversation in your head and wonder how you missed what was right in front of you. And Tracy grants a request, which sounds simple, but with Tracy, nothing is simple. I mean, even when she says yes, there's usually an agenda behind it, a little smirk attached, or some future consequence waiting around the corner. That's why I kind of love her, because even generosity from Tracy can feel like a setup. Now, Tuesday is where things get really juicy because Carly keeps a secret from Valentine. Not a misunderstanding. Not an awkward omission. A secret. And honestly, that one spoiler alone could feel half the week, because if Carly decides not to tell Valentine something, then she believes telling him would either blow something up, expose somebody, or put her in a worse position. Carly is not exactly a stranger to secret-keeping, but every time she does it, it becomes its own ticking time bomb. Meanwhile, Sunny gets encouraging news, which is interesting timing, because Sunny having a rare hopeful beat while Carly is hiding something from Valentine just feels like the show is building two emotional tracks that are destined to collide. And Anna returns to work, which, first of all, good for her, but second of all, you just know peace is not waiting there with flowers. Anna never gets a quiet re-entry. She comes back to chaos, suspicion, and at least one person acting shady. Dante's suggestion taking Lulu aback also feels important, because when Lulu is surprised by Dante, it usually means he's crossed into territory she didn't expect, emotionally or strategically. And then Britt and Tristan meet again, which immediately tells me that whatever this dynamic is, the writers want us paying attention. You don't put meet again in a spoiler unless there's chemistry, tension, history in the making, or some kind of complication brewing. And knowing Britt, even a simple second meeting can become deliciously messy. Then Wednesday comes in with Michael being caught off guard, and honestly, that could be about almost anything because Michael's life is basically one long parade of people withholding things, reacting badly, and making choices that land on his doorstep. But whenever a spoiler says he's caught off guard, I assume it's not tiny. It's not just a scheduling mix-up, it's something personal or strategic that throws off his whole read of the situation. And then Valentine lays out his plan, which is exactly why Carly's secret on Tuesday matters even more, because if he is actively putting his plan on the table while she's actively hiding something from him, the timing is awful in the best soap way. That's not just dramatic, that is tailored conflict. And Wednesday also gives us Portia surprising Curtis, which, let's be real, could go several different ways, but surprises in that pairing tend to come with emotional weight. Portia is not usually operating from random chaos, so if Curtis is surprised, I suspect it's something intentional, something she's decided she either has to reveal or has to do. Britt receiving some tough love sounds very Brit-coded too, because she's one of those characters who can take a verbal slap and still walk away with all the attitude in the world. I actually like that for her. And then Brennan has a warning for Anna, which, hello, giant red flag. Brennan warning Anna does not sound like friendly workplace guidance. That sounds like danger, leverage, or the start of a very grim countdown, and I mean that in the most entertaining way possible. Now, Thursday is just peak soap energy, because Nina gets a wild idea. Of course she does. Of course, Nina looks at a volatile situation and says, "You know what this needs? Me doing something bold and probably tone-deaf." I'm sorry, but that is on brand. Sometimes Nina's impulses lead somewhere surprisingly effective, and sometimes they lead straight into panic, fallout, and everybody else cleaning up the mess. Michael and Alexis compare notes, which I love as a spoiler because it suggests something bigger is being pieced together. That's not just a random chat over coffee. That sounds like two people connecting dots, checking stories, or realizing that separate concerns may actually be part of the same problem. And Sunny having a heart-to-heart with Rocco could be one of the more grounded emotional moments of the week, which I appreciate because not every scene has to be about someone ending up metaphorically 6 feet under. Sometimes the show really lands when it lets these characters talk honestly, especially across generations. Anna making Chase an offer is also interesting because offers from Anna usually come with purpose. This could be professional, strategic, or even a test of loyalty before the bigger storm hits. And Laura gives Dante some intel, which, again, is not casual. Laura doesn't just wander in and drop random trivia. If she has information for Dante, then Dante is clearly being positioned inside something active, something that matters, and that makes Friday's spoiler about him testing Chase feel even more loaded. And then Friday arrives with Jason and Danny returning home, which could be sweet on the surface, but on this show, returning home is sometimes the exact moment everything goes sideways. Homecomings bring relief, yes, but they also bring unfinished business right back to the front door. Brennan then delivers bad news, and see, that's why I don't trust any moment of calm. If Brennan is warning Anna on Wednesday and delivering bad news on Friday, then whatever he knows or suspects is escalating fast. Elizabeth challenges Willow, which honestly sounds overdue, because Willow has been in this space where other people keep reacting to her choices, and Elizabeth is not exactly known for sugarcoating when she thinks someone needs to hear the truth. And finally, Dante puts Chase to the test, while Lucas offers an apology, and both of those spoilers feel like they could carry a lot of emotional nuance. Dante testing Chase means standards are being measured, loyalty might be questioned, or somebody is being pushed to prove themselves. And Lucas apologizing, well, apologies in Port Charles are never just apologies. They're either too late, not enough, or the beginning of a whole new mess. So, let's talk about what all of this could mean because this spoiler week feels built around secrets, warnings, and people trying to stay one step ahead while the ground shifts under them. First up, I suspect Carly's secret from Valentine is the engine of the week, because the show highlighted Carly being shaken on Monday and then immediately followed it with her actively keeping something from Valentine on Tuesday, and that sequence feels deliberate. My guess is whatever rattles Carly is directly tied to information she thinks Valentine cannot know yet, either because it would give him leverage, expose someone she wants to protect, or completely wreck whatever balance currently exists between them. And the reason this feels so dangerous is that Valentine is not the type to shrug and move on when someone withholds information. He digs. He watches. He gets colder. So I could absolutely see Carly thinking she's containing a problem, when really she's creating a much bigger one. Honestly, with Carly, secrecy is usually less about deceit for sport and more about control, but the problem is that control in Port Charles lasts about 12 minutes. Next, I'm betting Valentine's plan on Wednesday is going to make Carly's silence look even riskier because if he is laying out a plan while she knows something he doesn't, then every part of that plan could be built on incomplete information. That's where the panic comes in. You can just imagine Carly standing there realizing that if Valentine moves forward, whatever she buried is going to explode at the worst possible time. And that would be classic soap structure because it lets the audience see the train coming long before the characters do. I wonder if Valentine standing his ground on Monday is the first clue that he already senses resistance around him. He may not know the secret yet, but he could know enough to feel that somebody is trying to maneuver him. And if so, that makes him even more dangerous, because a suspicious Valentine is a calculating Valentine. Another possibility is that Sunny's encouraging news is meant to contrast with the storm gathering elsewhere, and I actually think that contrast matters. When Sunny gets hopeful in spoiler week, it often means the writers are giving him a moment of emotional lift before a fresh complication walks in wearing expensive shoes. So I could see Sunny receiving genuinely good news, maybe enough to soften his mood or shift his outlook, only for the Carly Valentine situation or whatever Michael gets blindsided by to eventually ripple back toward him. And then there's Sunny's heart-to-heart with Rocco later in the week, which makes me think the show is trying to position Sunny not just in mob-adjacent drama, but in family-centered emotional territory too. That could be lovely. It could also be the calm before fresh chaos. Honestly, both can be true at once on this show. And here's another one. I suspect Lulu and Dante are moving into a more active shared storyline than it first appears. Lulu meets with Sunny on Monday, Dante surprises her with a suggestion on Tuesday, Laura gives Dante intel on Thursday, and by Friday Dante is testing Chase. That is a whole chain. That is not random. That sounds like Dante is gathering information, making moves, and possibly trying to decide who around him can handle pressure. Lulu being taken aback by Dante's suggestion tells me he says something bold, unexpected, or emotionally loaded, and I wonder if it pushes Lulu to reconsider where she stands on something important. You would think Dante would ease into it, but apparently not. And Laura feeding Dante information suggests this isn't just personal awkwardness. It may be tied to a larger concern she wants him to act on. So I'm betting Dante's Friday test for Chase is not just about friendship. It's about trust, judgment, or whether Chase can handle a role in whatever Dante is stepping into. Now, on the Chase front, Anna making him an offer on Thursday and Dante testing him on Friday feels way too connected to ignore. My guess is Chase is being pulled into something that requires both official confidence and personal reliability. I could see Anna offering him an opportunity, a task, or some kind of professional opening, while Dante, from his own angle, wants to know if Chase is really ready. And that is interesting because it sets up Chase to be evaluated from two sides at once. If that happens, it could either elevate him or leave him feeling cornered. Honestly, being put to the test on a soap is rarely a fun little pop quiz. It's usually more like, let's see if your judgment collapses under pressure while every relationship in your life gets stressed. So, yeah, not exactly a relaxing Friday. Next, Brennan is giving me major storm warning energy this week. Brennan has a warning for Anna on Wednesday, and then bad news on Friday, and to me that screams escalation. I suspect Brennan knows something is developing faster than Anna realizes, and the warning may be his attempt to get ahead of it before the consequences turn catastrophic. But because this is General Hospital, the bad news on Friday makes me think the warning either wasn't enough, wasn't heeded in time, or revealed only part of the picture. I could see Brennan trying to be cryptic, Anna pushing forward anyway, and then by Friday the cost becomes clear. And honestly, cryptic warnings are so annoying because if you know danger is coming, just say it with your whole chest. But no, soap people love a dramatic half-warning and then act shocked when everybody ends up in deeper trouble. Another possibility is that Michael being caught off guard and then comparing notes with Alexis later in the week means he stumbles into a bigger web of information than expected. I really like this spoiler pairing because it suggests movement from surprise to investigation. First he gets blindsided, then he starts processing, then he connects with Alexis to figure out what the heck is really going on. That could tie into family issues, legal angles, hidden motives, or something adjacent to Willow's unpleasant realization. My guess is that by the time Michael and Alexis are talking, the issue is no longer isolated. It has spread. It has pattern. And if Willow is realizing something ugly early in the week while Elizabeth challenges her on Friday, then I absolutely wonder if Willow's emotional arc and Michael's information arc are brushing up against the same truth from different directions. That would be smart writing, honestly. And speaking of Willow, I suspect her week is rough from beginning to end. An unpleasant realization on Monday is already enough to ruin anybody's mood, but Elizabeth challenging her on Friday suggests that Willow does not get to quietly process this on her own. Instead, she may have to defend herself, explain herself, or confront a truth somebody else refuses to let slide. And Elizabeth is a particularly effective challenger because she can sound compassionate right up until the moment she cuts straight to the issue. I could see Willow trying to hold herself together, trying to rationalize something, and Elizabeth basically saying, "No, let's not do that." Which, honestly, might be exactly what Willow needs, even if she hates hearing it. Sometimes the most brutal scenes are the most necessary. Now, let's get into Nina's wild idea, because that spoiler is practically begging for side-eye. I'm betting Nina sees an opening somewhere in the chaos and decides to act on impulse, which is both her strength and her downfall. It's not a stretch to imagine that Nina, feeling either excluded, threatened, or determined to regain influence, comes up with a plan that makes perfect sense to her in the moment and sounds slightly berserk to everyone else 5 minutes later. The reason I think this matters is that wild idea in soap language often means plot acceleration. It means somebody is about to interfere, reveal, manipulate, or set events in motion in a way that creates fallout by the next episode. And if Michael and Alexis are comparing notes the same day, I wonder if Nina's move either complicates what they're uncovering or accidentally confirms something they didn't know before. And of course, Britt and Tristan meeting again stands out as a quieter, but potentially spicy thread. I could see this being the beginning of a connection that feels intriguing at first and complicated later, because Britt never gets straightforward romance. There is always a catch, a bruise, a reputation issue, or a disaster lurking in the corner. Britt receiving some tough love on Wednesday makes me think that whatever is happening with Tristan, or in her own emotional life, somebody close to her believes she needs a reality check. And sometimes those are the best scenes, because Britt can fire back with the best of them. So I'm curious whether this second meeting is meant to deepen chemistry, deepen conflict, or both. My guess is both, because why choose peace when you can choose drama, with cheekbones? Another possibility is that Portia surprising Curtis is more important than it sounds. I suspect this is one of those spoilers that appears modest on paper and then turns out to carry real emotional weight. Portia doesn't usually move without thinking, so if Curtis is surprised, it could mean she's chosen a new direction, offered something unexpected, or revealed information she's been sitting on. And depending on how Curtis receives it, this could either be a turning point or the beginning of fresh tension. Honestly, these relationship scenes can sneak up on you. One surprise conversation, and suddenly the whole emotional landscape shifts. That's the kind of stuff General Hospital can do really well when it slows down just enough to let the characters bruise each other with words instead of just plot mechanics. Now, Jason and Danny returning home on Friday could absolutely be the emotional reset that isn't actually a reset. I could see the show using that return to re-establish family grounding, only to place it right against Brennan's bad news and the rest of the week's unraveling tension. Homecomings are supposed to feel safe. That's why they're so effective when they're shadowed by something ominous. And Jason's presence alone can change the temperature of a room. So if he comes back into Port Charles at a moment when multiple secrets, warnings, and tests are already in motion, his return may matter more than the spoiler is letting on. I'm not saying he walks in and fixes anything, because this is not a fairy tale, but I could see his presence shifting alliances, priorities, or the emotional calculus for other characters. And last but not least, Lucas offering an apology on Friday makes me think someone has reached the point where avoiding the issue is no longer possible. I wonder if this apology is heartfelt, overdue, or all of the above. On soaps, apologies are never just clean resolutions. They reopen wounds. They stir memory. They force the other person to decide whether forgiveness is even on the table. So I suspect Lucas's apology may be less about wrapping up a conflict and more about starting a harder conversation. And honestly, that can be more compelling than a neat reconciliation because people on this show do not get neat very often. So, as a secondary storyline, I do want to circle back to Tracy granting a request because even though it's tucked into Monday, I think it could have ripple effects depending on who asked and why. Tracy doesn't hand out favors like party candy, so whenever she says yes, I immediately assume there's subtext, strategy,